Good away, Blake.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, July 6, 2023 Watertown City Plan Commission. Can we get a roll call?
Yes, Brink.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Dolly.
Here.
Kays.
Here.
Culhane. Here. Oletsky.
Present.
And Spire, Ford, and Dargis Johnson are absent. We have a quorum, and we only need a majority for a yes vote, which is 4.
Thank you, Brandy. Item 3 on the agenda is the invitation for public comments participant submittal. I think we have a sign up here at the desk if you'd like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda today. Item 4 is the approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. We'll move on to item 5 is the approval of the minutes from the June 8th, 2023 meeting. We had a chance to review those. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any discussion on those? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. We'll move on to item 6 on the regular agenda. 6A is the commission consideration of resolution 2023-11, concept plan for Andrews North Side Addition.
Mr. Chair, I am an adjacent landowner to this project, so I'm going to recuse myself from this item.
Thank you, Mr. Brink. Brandy?
Yes, thank you, Blake. So, as stated, this is a concept plan for the quarter section of land just to the east of Highway, North Highway 81 and south of 26th Avenue Northeast. And then north of the North Ridge development that may be a proximal location for some to identify with. So this is 160 acres of property here, and I'll pull up the concept plan. The owner is J&J Land Sales, and then Colin DeYoung is the agent for this project. And so they are proposing a variety of zoning designations throughout. And this was approved by our design review team. And our comments that we had worked with the developer on were well received and implemented into this plan. And so it was a lot of that where you can see there's the transitional zoning. So the yellow here on this map is to designate the C3 highway commercial, and then the purple area is C2 local commercial, and then this faint, almost transparent color is R3 multifamily residential, and then the blue is R2 single family attached residential. And you can see, so that creates a buffer there, and then that goes up in this area. And so again, this transparent, that's all R3 multifamily, which that will abut the collector of 11th Street once that extends from where you're familiar with, like the middle school and the roundabout.
Mr. Chair, Randy, would you say that blue on the north of 24th, that's R2?
Right here?
Yeah, is that what you said?
Yep.
R2? Okay.
Yep. And then this red is R1 single family, just your typical residential district there, the single family. And then the R1C, which is the single family residential compact district. This isn't the first, so this is a new zoning district. This isn't the first use of this, as if you guys recall, Prairie Haven has utilized that as well, which is the development, a newer development over on Golf Course Road over by Derby Downs. And so to Northridge actually was a case model for the R1C, because Northridge is a PUD, which is a planned unit development to allow for smaller or less dense lots. And so a lot of the stipulations that Northridge implements and requires so does the R1C district. So it's really an extension of Northridge. So in that respect, it's a nice transition there. And then otherwise, park dedication. I'll scroll down here. This was approved by the park board on April 25th. And how that will be phased in, because the park land that was approved is shown in this area. And that was I'm running out of, I can't think of words. That was, for lack of better, that was a good location in the park board's opinion, because it is surrounded by more of the multifamily residential lots. So because that will be coming in at phase 6, we have a incremental collection plan approved where they will donate the cash in lieu up until they get to phase 6, and then the land will be dedicated, and then the portion of cash that has been submitted will be reimbursed. But we want to make sure that we're getting cash in lieu in case phase 6 never happens. So with that, I will stand by for any questions.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Case?
just a couple observations. We seem to have a really large amount of highway commercial zoning, more than 300 or 400 feet off of what I would call a highway. And my question is that really what we're encouraging, those uses that are found in the highway commercial zone to be that close to R2 zoning? I can understand, especially that trapezoidal piece that's adjacent to the 2 commercial lots north of 24th on the east side. To me, highway commercial is in this situation is we're promoting a lot of different more intensive uses, because there's a litany of highway commercial uses that would be located that far off, could create more traffic flow issues as we move forward.
So just as an example, Highway 212 is another arterial. Highway 81 also is.
I'm familiar. What I'm saying is conceptually, we've got properties that are zoned C3 along 212 and 81 and 20, sometimes going back blocks where we have potentially uses that would abut each other that aren't necessarily appropriate. And from my perspective, is I think I don't have a problem with the 2 pieces of property, zone C3, that are north and east of that area, that's zone C2. But I think when we start butting it, I think the more appropriate zoning designation would be C2 at the lower end of that public park dedication area that's going to be moving down forward. That piece there, and that piece there, I think are more appropriate to be C2 zoned as opposed to C3, just because of the potential conflict of intensive uses and traffic patterns generated by C3 zoning. That's just my druthers.
And where's that 300-foot take you if you go off of the Highway 81 easterly section there?
As far as, like, you want me to, so, okay, as, like, how deep these lots are, dimension-wise? So they're 430?
And those ones on the north side that Todd was speaking of?
Get down, so these lots are about 100.
Because US Highway 81 switches and goes east there at that intersection, right? And so that's why 26th Avenue is called out as Highway 81. So this is technically still adjacent, except for those interior lots there.
Yep. And so those being, then up here, so it's 453 feet deep. And then I guess as far as, I'll do a quick calc here.
It starts to put you a pretty long ways away from the
That's my
highway at
point.
that point.
That's
Yeah.
my point. And I mean, if this would be different, I think if it was more, if this was a Louise Avenue sort of a development where it's all type of, intensive commercial uses, I'm not exactly certain that's the case with what you're butting up against.
Yeah, I think that gets you down to about 890 feet. So I think too, if that zoning was cut off at Jameson Trail, about, at that lot, that would be more consistent.
And I still think there are still quite a few C2 uses that are, that as a conditional use that are comparable to some C3 uses. I mean, you're not reducing a ton of different types of uses, but
Right.
do we have a little bit more design review at a C2 use than we do as a C3 within the ordinance as far as, we have screening requirements regardless, right? Whether it's C2 or C3.
Right.
I just think the traffic that could be generated off those 3 lots would.
In terms of ingress egress, so we have principally 24th Avenue and be 7th Street Northeast leading into that commercial zone then, both the C2 and C3 area. Is that anticipated that all of those lots are going to access the businesses from the interior and not direct access off the highway?
Correct.
Yeah, the state of South Dakota has reviewed that.
Well, they would have to apply for an access permit. They have reviewed these locations for the actual collector routes, the minor collectors, but they would, if anyone wanted access, they would need to permit that with the DOT or apply for that with the DOT. But as far as we're concerned, we just need a lot to have access to public right-of-way. So we know that they are not landlocked. They would be able to have access to these interior lots that are just regulated by the city.
When we get to platting is when we would determine the access.
Right.
And the state has the wherewithal and the say of whether or not they can come onto Old 81 or not.
Yep.
And like we see in some of the other commercial arrangements, you may have some access agreements across commercial lots depending on the types of businesses that go in. And
Mr. Chair, I know there's somebody in the audience that could maybe answer this DOT question. Please state your name for the record.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Jeff Brank, adjacent landowner, and I do work for the Department of Transportation. Yes, the department has reviewed access permits, and we told the applicant that we would allow 3 accesses. Those are the streets, 24th, 7th, and 11th. The lots at this time, due to the speed limits, we said had to come off of interior routes. I mean, if and when speed limits change, that could be a different story. But with what we currently have, those are the 3 access points that they get from us.
And the state retains all of the right-of-way access right now on that section of road.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's consistent with strategy that we're trying to take across other communities in both South Dakota and across the nation in terms of limiting access on major highways.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I have a question. Okay, on that multifamily along the east border, are they going to, each one of them are going to access off of 11? That's not going to be an interior road? They'll each have their own drive?
So we'll make sure that meets the engineering design standards at the time of building permit application. But each lot would have its own separate access, and because those are pretty big lots, there's nothing wrong with having access points. But then how many they could have, we'd look at that at the time of building permit application.
Okay, then I have another question. That green triangle, the top one, right there, is that protected water? That looks like it's a grassy, dry drainage ditch. Is that protected?
So it's a drainage way. So that will remain detention and drainage function. So the water will still have to flow.
Are they going to enhance that more so more of the runoff and stuff from the development will go in there?
Yes.
And then once it's in there and it's flowing north into the Big Sioux or something like that, is that what happens with that once it gets past there?
Well, I think, doesn't it go south?
No, that goes north.
Oh, okay.
That's where the top of the hill crests right there.
Yeah, there we go.
That would be the north. So to the very bottom right hand of that document there is where it shows to go north through our property. And then,
Do you want to introduce yourself?
again, sorry,
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Andy Wicks, adjacent landowner, to the north there. So if you look on the bottom right-hand side of that document, there's two red lines that basically coincide going to the north. Let's see.
All right, I got it all flipped around here now because I want to find the north arrow.
So just
Turn it clockwise once.
there we go.
Oh, like it was? Okay.
Yep.
I'm flipped around then.
Okay. Part of one of the problems, or why we're here today, is to talk about the water drainage. So I'm glad we brought this up. But so if you close this box down here, so the proposed concept is at the very bottom right there. Yep. And then as it flows to the north, it goes north for 1 mile, and then it starts to go north and then northwest slowly, and then ends up back in the Sioux River.
Okay.
So all of this water that would be coming off their concept goes directly onto, actually, I'm the one that receives all of that water directly, and then it disperses onto the other neighboring lands.
And Brandy, can you talk us through the regulations that govern water and water transference from developments like this?
Yes. So this development, they have to create detention to hold all of the water that their additional impervious surface would be creating and release it at the pre-developed rate. So they would have control structures and whatnot so that more water was not releasing at a faster rate, or that it was just staying at the pre-developed rate. So all of that has to be accounted for, and that is reviewed at the time of preliminary plan and construction plan approvals, where we go into greater detail with it. Staff does, and the engineering division. And then that is all reviewed prior to the plat coming forward, which then will have the development agreement for what their responsibilities will be for improving those drainage ways, or and so on.
Yes, sir.
For the public, then, what we're doing today is agreeing to the concept. This is what we think it could look like, right? The next step of that is that preliminary plan or that preliminary plat, of which there will be another opportunity for the public to come in and comment on that. Is that correct, Brandy?
No.
No?
So after the concept plan, it is all staff review. And do not be alarmed, I'm not in the engineering division, so I'm not looking at, since I didn't know it went north. That's what our engineers are reviewing. So, and it will be a more in-depth drainage study. We'll get a hydraulic analysis and everything that we'll review to make sure that, that the pre-developed rate is being released and detained at everything that is being drained or created, the additional drainage from this development.
And theoretically, is if the engineering is done, it's been signed off by the city, the developers develop it according to the plan, and for some odd reason, the water is being released at rates greater than that, you have a civil action. You know, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, so you're wondering, when do I get a shot at this? Because I'm just talking from a county perspective, where I have a lot of experience in you know, county drainage issues. There are rules and regulations about putting water on lands. The same thing applies here.
Do you guys have permits for that?
Not in Kyneton County, but in about several other counties they do.
Okay, Mr. Chair,
I'd like to have a comment too, please.
1 moment.
Okay, now what you're talking about, like drainage and stuff, if you look at that Northridge addition and it goes down through that drainage ditch that is beside Doc Hanson's old building and stuff, and it flows, and sometimes when it's really raining, that really flows into the Lutheran school. You know, under the bridge has them great big box culverts. Could this do something like that on a rain incident into these people's yards?
No. we would make sure, I mean, we're reviewing this, so as it exists today, how the drainage is, anything that we would be allowing would be an improvement, if anything. So there's the natural drainage course, and then we'll review it against now once it would be developed, and there would be that additional impervious surface so that it would not be creating additional problems. But also, I believe how these contours run is like North Ridge is a ridge, so everything should be going to the north.
And Bonnie, when that development was approved for the school, that land where the water is being there, that was part of the retention of that development.
Yeah, and I think it's great, you know, the way that it works like that, but during a rain incident, it really flows for, I don't know, like an hour or something. And that was meant for that purpose, which is a great plan. But now I'm wondering on to these homeowners that aren't in the city of Watertown, they're in Cottington County. You know, will they get a chance to see what your plan is before it's approved on the water drainage?
No, not additional. Because that's what our engineering division does.
That's what we talked about when we changed the rules in the subdivision process to have the concept plan where the planning commission is basically saying, do we generally agree with the concept of how this is going to look? Is it going to be comporting with our land use plan? And that was the role of the planning commission. And then from there, the preliminary plan or preliminary plat would be reviewed by staff professionals, and they would make sure that it would be kosher with all of the city code for development.
Correct.
I will open the public hearing. I don't think I stated that previously, so sir, if you'd like to make a comment, just state your name for the record.
I am Lonnie Greenfield. I live on Old 81. I'm the first place north of this operation where the water runs through. If you could bring that back up on the map. That's the tree claim. I'm right along Highway Old 81, right straight down. About a quarter mile up, you can see basically the backyard of my property.
Oh,
Okay. Go up a little bit. right there.
This?
2710 4th
all
Street.
right.
I live at 2710 4th Street, and there's water flowing through there every spring. And there has been since I've lived there, which is 10 years. And once I sandbagged the back door of the house, thinking, because there was a flood that went through there in 1997. And it flooded the basement. I know the situation there. I am able to sandbag a little bit if I need to. I don't want to. That creek is within probably 100 foot of my property, less than that. And in the spring of the year, it backs up all the way onto my property and into my backyard. I know when I bought the thing, I probably should have looked a little more carefully at the way the water was flowing, but you don't think about that when you're looking for a place to live. So my only concern mainly is that the water is retained back far enough and released slow enough that I won't have to be sandbagging my house every time there's a rain. Because with all the development going on in that area, there's a lot of runoff, and it's going to go somewhere. And I prefer it not to wind up in my backyard. I know it piles up in Lou's fireworks stand every spring, and that's sent several feet of water in there until it finally dries out. So, and that's been the holding pond, quote, holding pond. It's not a designated one, but that's where the water seems to hold. And those culverts there are small. They don't, when they open up, the water comes through. But those are real small culverts, and anything larger that's put in there is going to release it that much quicker, which I foresee as a problem for myself. So I just wanted to get on record and let you know I'd like to have something done with that, hopefully, that'll mitigate any possible flooding in my backyard on a big rain event or a big spring thaw event. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandy, are you able to speak to any of the engineering concepts that can be used to control the release or slow the release of water that could be leveraged?
I wonder if Colin is here.
I do see Colin in the back there.
I mean, so really though, with the pre-developed rate, so if they could do they can engineer things all different ways.
Sure, yeah, I guess what we would be looking at is building a berm along the north side of that green space. And then we would use, typically we use like a concrete control structure that will have different orifices in it to control the release of the water at pre-developed rates.
And probably even digging that out and expanding it, because you are going to use that as a detention area as well.
Correct, yep.
So it's going to go also into the ditch, going east and west, and then
we
go
would-
through a culvert into their yards?
Yep, we would have to keep our dirt work on our property. So we would release the water into the 81 ditch, and then it would go the way it's always gone.
But with your grading plan, you'll be able to retard the water flows that are even coming off a little bit as they are right now undeveloped. I mean, right now, the way it's laying, but with the way you grade it for development, it could actually improve the situation.
Correct, yep.
Because you will be holding some of that water back and releasing it at a specific rate.
Right, yep.
All of it. So like today, however the water is draining.
This goes.
Yeah. So now they're going to be directing it to a pond and then releasing it.
And the intention is for the full development to flow into the detention pond that's outlined there in the northeast corner.
They have multiple
Correct.
detention ponds.
Yep.
So it's not just in one location.
Where's the other
So,
retention pond?
Right here, because that's a low spot. And then right here, I believe, so they show them on here. So their detention outlet A. There's another one there.
Yep, I think it's just 2.
And that's the park dedication there.
Yep.
And that's not, the park dedication's not being used for water detention.
The water course does flow along the west side of it, but it's not being used as
It's used for
detention.
transference to the main detention pond.
Correct, yep.
And the detention facility that would be abutting Mr. Roddershot's property should potentially help that situation as far as the water currently running off.
Right, I think it would be an improvement.
Improvement.
As long as his property graded properly to it, like.
Well, and we would be catching the water from our development that currently flows
currently
onto his
flowing to it.
property. We're going to take it into the pond and direct it to the 81 ditch.
So you can see on the contour map there how that whole kind of corridor right now slopes down towards his property. Was there any other questions for Mr. DeYoung?
Surrounded by.
Jeff Brink, Department of Transportation. I'm going to chime in about drainage from the department standpoint. Currently, there is 4 pipe in 81. There's 2 directly east of Lou's Fireworks. Those are twin 54-inch pipes. Those are scheduled to be replaced with a 4x12 box culvert this summer. And then right where Brandy's cursor is right there, there's twin 60-inch pipes that are also scheduled to be replaced with a 4x12 structure. The DOT's planning process is an 8-year plan, so these were planned and scheduled, and the plans were developed well before this development ever came to fruition. I mean, this was in the works years before J&J even owned this property. But the reason the DOT is upsizing those structures currently is when there is flows through there, they don't adequately handle the water, and it's caused some erosion. And if you drive right where Brandy's cursor is right now, there's a dip in the road. That's because there's been washed out of material. So the DOT is upgrading their structures. Actually, starting in 10 days, they're going to start that project. But I just wanted to point out that them updating their structures had nothing to do with this plan in any way.
Mr. Chair, so the upsizing of those structures will exacerbate the existing situation or make it better?
The updating of the structures was to adequately handle the existing flow of water. So as long as the flow of water is at or below what it currently is at, that's what those structures are designed for.
All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, what they're going to do is when Colin and those guys design for that big one, they're taking that in consideration too, that bigger culvert? Is
Yes.
that, okay, thanks.
I have some images I can hand out so everybody can kind of see what they're.
Yeah,
Sure, after.
I think Mr. Rottershot wants to
Yeah.
speak here.
I just have one.
If you just state your name for the record.
I own the Louis Fireworks property. And I just had one comment that I thought I would add to just the discussion here, and that would be that I have been working with the South Dakota Department of Transportation for about 2 years on this property. And I might have a concern if I was a local landowner, like Lonnie up here, but the culverts, they are, yeah, if you can put that up there. I was thinking about charging a fee for some fishing rights because of the water that was coming through my lot, so,
This would be your property right here.
yeah.
Images on the back side there that actually show his property.
Brandy, if you could just pull up that quarter. And I might just comment just on that.
On this map here?
Yeah, just, okay, and there you go, right there. Just the upper left hand now, where our property is, right there. Yep. Okay, those, the water, when it melts in the springtime, comes along the southwest side of our property and flows across. And this gentleman here has some pictures that I didn't realize, but he might, that will be helpful to you. But it runs to the north and east, and that's where they're proposing, DOT is putting new culverts in. And I don't know how that's going to affect Lonnie and some of the other property owners up there, but that water flow is probably going to go through there a lot faster than it currently is. But right now, it is damming up on our property. I've had to replace our gravel there a few different times, and it's just very spongy. In fact, we just got through the 4th of July season, and some of our driveway is even still pretty wet. And so our desire was to do something, to move the water out of there. Actually, we didn't propose it to DOT, though. They did. They came to me and said they wanted to replace with some bigger culverts here. So I didn't have any part in that, but I thought, well, maybe this will help my problem, but I don't know how it's going to affect the other landowners to the north and east. But anyway, I just thought I'd add that. But we're at the point right now where we feel like we almost have to build a berm up on the south. You can see the east and west driveway coming into our property that we're, just pull your pointer down just to the south and west of our building. Right, yeah, go.
Here, you go ahead.
Okay. Like right in here, because in the springtime, this water just flows and I lose all my gravel. But right through here, as this water comes from the south and west, we're wondering if we need to build a berm so we can channel that water to go more through this waterway through here. I'm not sure what the exact answer is, but we do have a little bit of a water issue there. So I'll let the other landowners that are close by comment on it. But I just wanted to and Jeff, where'd Jeff go? Yeah, Jeff answered the question before I came up, and I didn't know he's going to, but DOT is working on some new culverts there, so.
So I just want to be clear, though, before we get too far into existing drainage issues. So as this, that's how the drainage has existed. So, but when we're reviewing this development and the concept plan and the preliminary plan, construction plans, we'll make sure that it's all accommodated for. It's good to know, but, and as far as DOT's project with the culverts, that's unrelated as well. And that would be something to take up with the DOT.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm Andy Wicks again. So I got a little letter I had put together here, I guess, First things first, I guess I'm a little disappointed in the whole process. It's the first time I've ever been involved in this. But so our notice that we received is basically the same notice that we had up earlier, although the one that we received actually has some errors on it. The developer name was wrong, the colors are wrong. So I really don't know at that point what we were, basically being asked to approve. So when we see, errors, although that's human, I mean, that's not what we're here for, right? If we're being asked to approve a concept, I suspect it's reasonable that it accurately depicts what's being discussed. So more importantly, city's comprehensive land use plan shows a vision for this property, a different vision than what's currently proposed. Current land use plan shows a vision for this property is all residential, mix of R1 as well as R3. Annexation proposal detracts from that vision with a significant amount of commercial property being suggested, which is almost half, right? Most likely due to its probability of retaining higher land value for the investor of this project. There's a proposed elementary school in your concept, and commercial real estate would not be a great use in an area that's trying to serve a school, in my opinion. If the city doesn't want to follow its land use plan, maybe we should save the cost and time of allocating the resources to put it together in the first place. And most critically is cited on the general notes, line item 3, no known drainage issues. This is simply not true. All the water in this current plan flows north. Currently, South Dakota DOT is replacing culverts across 26th Avenue, also referred to as Highway 81. Due to upstream tiling to the southeast, Northridge development to the south, and Jefferson School development to the southwest, the water flow has increased over the last amount of time. 10 years, 15 years, whatever. An obvious reason exemplifying this fact is 26th Avenue has developed that dip in the road. The water coming in there is already more than what we can handle, right? So that's why DOT is putting those culverts in. Not only are they replacing the culverts, they're upsizing. The one by Lou's Fireworks on the corner there goes from, he said they're box culverts and they give the dimensions, but if you look at the square, the cross section of that, it's basically the equivalent of going from 2 round culverts to the equivalent of 5. And that was actually, so I had to sell some property to DOT, otherwise they were going to take it. And that's basically what because I said, I don't need any more water, I don't want any more water. And they said, well, we have to put 5 culverts in instead of 2, we're going to do it whether you like it or not. I consulted my counsel, they said, thus far, there's really not much you can do, but as soon as the city or any other person starts changing the drainage, you have that data. So, houses that are downstream from this, I mean, our septics are already at the high in the spring. Green fields, our own personal property, we have similar issues, So any more that we would be taking was going to be a problem. So I have farm ground and we have other prospective land uses. We have 130 acres back there. And so if we are going to take more water or take it faster, there's minimal elevation drop on our property. So it just sits down in the bottom on the north end there. And so it's a significant concern of mine. Stormwater runoff plan provided by Austin Engineering shows the water volume increasing. If you look at your sheets, they have acknowledged that what they are doing, if you look at the first page of the, let's see here, can you go to, it'd be I think maybe the last page or two, the one that looks like a map.
So I don't have that packet, so I can't.
You don't? Yeah, you did. You had it up.
Like you want the concept?
Like page
Yeah, the concept.
16?
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
So it'd be page, I think 14 and 15, I don't know. I'm kind of a rookie at this, so I apologize. So, yeah, they have one, if you look off on the right, it's highlighted and it says pre-developed drainage route
Yeah, see mine.
and post-developed, right? So on the top left-hand corner, that's highlighted. It shows area A discharge, shows 66.9 acres. Everybody see that? Okay. So Q2, that's a 2-year annual average rainfall, right? It's to be a significant rainfall event, but every 2 years you can expect that. 38 cubic feet per second / 5.16 acre feet. My understanding is that discharge rate will cover 5 acres, 1 foot of depth, right? So if we look at their post-developed plan, that changes that value from 5.1 to 6.95. They've already shown us that they're going to dump 2 more acre feet worth of water on our property. That is a problem, right? We already know we're at max, and they're showing they're going to contribute more, right? So the issue with that is these are all numbers based on before the culverts are being replaced. So DOT is putting bigger culverts in so it drains faster, and now we're going to get more water from there. So if you look at the percentage increase, that's 35% more water that they're going to dump in on the Lewis Fireworks corner that is coming directly onto our property. That I am not agreeable with.
So, and we might ask if the designer could come up here and maybe speak to that a little bit more.
Okay.
Yep.
Let me just finish where I'm at, I guess. So the current proposals show stormwater retention ponds, but there's no grading plan included with what we've seen. The problem with the proposed retention ponds is there's elevated groundwater in the area, right? So you dig down maybe a foot to 2 feet, and there's groundwater. So if you have a drainage ditch and they say they're going to dig it down to retain it, then it doesn't do any good. If the pond's already full, it's not going to control any runoff. So that's not an effective structure to do that. The only way to do that is make it expansive and cover square footage, and that's the only way you're going to get it to dissipate. So the plan, the concept plan that we've been given doesn't show that at all. It just basically shows we're squaring off areas that are already wet. You can see in those pictures that you have there what happens in the spring, and that doesn't happen just in the spring. That's during a 2-inch rainfall event. All those things look very similar to that. And there's one image there you can see where it's backing up in the culverts. Can I have that? I'm going to believe it is from the back, it is the 4th image or second image that would be included in your packet, or the first image, either way. So the first image in your packet, if we look at that, that shows facing the north, which is the way the water drains. You see the red barn in the corner? Everybody got the same picture? Okay, so the proposed area is on the bottom side of that picture. And you can see where that storm water is already backing up against the culvert. Highway 81 or 26th Avenue is currently stopping that flow. Those culverts are at max at that point. So we actually hired a surveyor to make sure the state gets the elevations correct and stuff, because I'm so concerned of how much more water is going to come in there, because it's going to wreck that farm ground, right? That's my my property, it's my investment, and I sure I'm going to do what I can to ensure that it doesn't do any harm. And so everything I've been given between the concept plan with the mistakes and the engineering data that we've already been given shows that you're going to put 35% more on one side of it with old data from the old culverts. I mean, how can I be agreeable that, because all this stuff comes on my property, then I have to try to fix it, then I got to dump it on my neighbors. So we have this hot potato game that it's got to stop somewhere, right? I guess that pretty much adds up what I had for you.
Thank you, sir.
If I could speak a little bit to the mistakes that were brought up. So the title block was wrong. We worked with the developer on that. We send the adjacent landowner letters out in advance. So if they would have read, on the letter, we reference that the agenda will be posted online. So if they saw that, and then you can also see a larger picture. But mailings, we do a front and back mailing. It's always consistent. It's that way. We figured that it was pertinent to at least to get the letters sent out, even if the title block was wrong. And then the engineer did send us that updated title block. So
how many days before this meeting was that information made available to the public?
The agenda.
The updated title block and documents for the adjoining property owners to see.
So it was 24 hours in advance of the meeting.
So
is
yesterday.
By state
Yesterday.
statute.
So yesterday.
So since
That's
yesterday.
by state statute.
Yep. So since yesterday, I had to analyze and come up with look at what the data we had. So the last time we received this notice, when it was pulled from the agenda, this is the exact same map that I got. So they had 2 months to fix it, and I actually emailed, is it Jana? I emailed her and I expressed my concerns, and so we received the same exact plating that we had already expressed concerns with. So, okay, maybe that's what they really want to put in front of us. So what I looked at yesterday on the day before is not representative of what this is. So we've changed the developer name, we've changed, these colors are still wrong,
It's just how it printed.
but it's inaccurate, right? And this letter says that this is what we're here to approve the concept of, and this does not reflect what we're even talking about. And then we sit here and we talk about, yeah, we're going to modify this, and this is maybe a mistake. I understand that mistakes happen, but we're dealing with professional engineers and professional people. We should have professional results.
It should be the same plan, change title block. The colors are just reflect different how they were printed. And so now we can have the designer come and maybe speak to the engineering. I don't know.
And then the lack of the number 3 that I was talking about. And by the way, the letters that we get, this is not even legible. Like, what you're seeing is a direct copy of the letter that we've received. So the letters are condensed, just the quality of the print. I mean, that's exactly what we get in the mail. So if you aren't willing to look at the agenda the day before, like, you can't hardly read what's on here. So how are you really supposed to know?
Brandy,
Right?
am I correct that the picture that we provide on the back of the letter is a courtesy and not required for state statute?
That's correct.
But by putting it on there, that's what's being reflected, right? If you put the information out there, that's what's being represented. Am I?
We just like to think that the more information we can provide, the better. But we're not going to print the entire concept plan and mail that out.
And I don't think that's necessary, but I think it should be at least reasonable to give an accurate depiction of what we are talking about, and maybe it'd be a legible one.
Sure.
I'd invite Colin to come up and speak to the design plans.
Colin DeYoung with Austin Engineering. I guess first off, stormwater management, what we're required to do is not release the water at rates higher than pre-developed. As areas get developed and impervious surfaces are installed, there's always an increase in volume, and that's what the detention pond is for, is to hold back that volume and release it at pre-developed rates. So they are going to have more water coming onto their property, which is just, an effect of development.
So answering his question, on page 15 and 16, or whatever that was, he was saying that there's going to be more water, potentially, but you're saying that because of development and impervious surfaces, there will be more water generated, but you're saying that that water will be retained and it will not be released any worse than what it's coming off of today.
Correct, yep.
But that's not what's in your plan.
It's the same size hose, it's going to be on for a little bit longer.
Correct,
He has a bigger
yeah.
hose, right?
Except for the DOT's got a bigger hose now.
Well, and we're going to look at it before it gets to the pipes. So we're
Your rate is,
detaining,
your rate is based on discharge at the property line?
correct,
Okay, so it's before it gets the DOT's. So
Right.
that 38 cubic feet per second, is that what it is?
right. So whether the pipes are two 24-inch pipes or a box culvert there, that's not going to affect the way we are designing our pond for release rates.
Because you might have more apples in the bag, and I might have a bigger bag, it doesn't really matter, because it's still the same amount of apples are gonna be going into the bag. I'm trying to make some
Correct.
sort of an analogy that would make sense. The bag is, right now the bag is this
Right.
big.
Yeah.
DOT's making it this big, but still the same amount of water is gonna be released into that bag at that point.
Correct, yep.
But Colin,
Just trying to
what
make it so I
about,
understand it.
okay, what about like what Andrew was saying, that there already is water in there naturally? So are you going to dig it a lot deeper and bigger than what it is naturally?
Right, we would build up the, wherever the groundwater is at, we have to use that as our water surface elevation. And then our detention pond, our detention would be above that.
So you're going to have like berms?
Correct, yeah.
Is that similar to the way, so we've got just west of the cemetery off of 14th Avenue, we've got some soccer fields and things there that act as detention facilities in rain events. They have a berm built up in a control structure to release that flow. So that's similar to what you would be looking at.
Yep, it'd be a similar function.
Any additional questions for Mr. Dion?
Do you plan to let the water, like within 24 hours, do you plan to have, as you build this, that would be the plan, within 24 hours, have it dry pretty much? Like that one along 14th Avenue North?
That all depends on the release rate compared to the volume. So those, in a large rain event, those release times can be extended.
So how long do you guys think that it would take for the water to release past Andrews and Rodershots through that land? Will that be more too?
Yeah. I mean, we would have to analyze that. This is preliminary stage, but once we get the ponds designed and the outlet structures designed, we would know more on, total time.
The release rate is going to be the same, but it just might be longer.
Right, yep.
Quick question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So the construction of these detention facilities, we have an 8-phase project. When are those going to be done? I mean, are they done as soon as we start number 1, we're going to start building this detention facility up there? Or how does that work?
Right. We would either construct those detention facilities right away, or we would have temporary detention facilities as we phase it out.
And that gets approved by staff at what you guys do behind the scenes.
Phase.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dion.
And I think overall too, conceptually, then we're understanding where the water is going today, and then where the development will plan to take it, and it'll meet our regulations. And I mean, all of the public input is helpful to make it known of the sensitivity when they are reviewing it further in the preliminary and construction plan phases. And then I think that we still had another gentleman that wanted to.
Jeremy Epson, property owner in Northridge. Just out of curiosity, before I moved here, before Northridge was built, right, we keep talking about the water and this development pushes it. Right now when it rains, there's designed holding ponds to the south of Northridge, right, because that's where that water's going. Them ponds were designed to slow that down, right? But then why does that flood all the way to Roby Creek in the middle of town if it's designed to just be slower or for longer periods of time, right? I mean, in my yard, I'm on the top. My neighbor right behind me just put in a Sandpoint well that's 4 feet down, right? So that water's constantly there. So I'm just out of curiosity, before that Northridge development was built, can anybody tell me, was there that much water flow down to the Lutheran school?
I grew up about 4 blocks south of, well, my folks used to own the land where 10th Avenue sits. And as a kid, I can tell you when Roby Creek would used to flood and the water that would come up back and go up north there, it was deep and it was fun.
Right. So I guess the question with that, them holding ponds were put there right on 14th Avenue. I'm guessing Colin can maybe attest to this. Them round elevated culverts that have holes in them for that water to go. It doesn't look like to me that them hold that water enough that they continue. I mean, you get them lots over there right next to Roby Creek, them apartment buildings, the streets flood there. That's from a 2-inch rain. Isn't that the same thing that will happen here? It's gonna go right over and through that stuff. I mean, that's one of the questions. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Are you talking farther south on Roby
Correct,
Creek?
the opposite way, right? So from Northridge, we're up on top of that hill there, right? This is gonna go north, but everything south, it's the same concept. We have everything from 14th Avenue through the Lutheran School down to 10th Avenue. We're saying with this, if there's a 2-inch rainfall, them holding ponds are gonna hold that water and it's not gonna elevate, it's just gonna take longer to drain. Right now, that doesn't do it that way. I mean, when we get that 2-inch rainfall, there's a heck of a lot more water running through there than a 1/2-inch rainfall, right? In the normal drainage.
Yeah, and it will slow and detain that water before transferring it off property, but it will still continue down to the subsequent drainage ways.
And I think that there's a lot of drainage issues in different locations, but this means that it's not, I mean, it's flowing north anyway, so this should not cause an impact, a greater impact. But that's all the things that we're reviewing as we get the hydraulic analysis and the greater detailed plans for the engineers to review.
Yeah, there's a significant amount of engineering that still goes into it past this phase, and some of the things that you're mentioning with farther south in town with Roby Creek, a lot of that development happened before many of the current engineering standards are in place, and so we don't have detention facilities all the way through town in a lot of these neighborhoods, the older neighborhoods of town. The newer developments like this are subject to much more stringent standards than the older part of town.
Thank you.
Okay, based on size, we all know what the south one looks like size-wise. Is the north one going to be larger than that? You know, where it's still using that same drainage ditch and then go into those holding ponds at the school? Is this going to be that same size or bigger?
You can come take a seat. Sorry, Bonnie, could you repeat that?
Okay, now we know what the south looks like. Okay, looks like it's the same creek, and that's going to be going to the north. Is it going to be as large as that, you know, and then it flows into the Lutheran school? Is this going to be that big?
I feel like that's a hard thing to say at this point.
Until the analysis is done, I don't know how you can make any sort of guess.
No, you're like, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yep, introduce yourself, please.
My name is Don Ramble, and I live on 26th Avenue Northeast. I'm probably one of the older guys that's been out there for all these years. I've been there 33 years, and I've seen a lot of storms come through there. The thing I'm confused with is how are we going to compute this overflow? You talk about having it set at a predetermined level. Are there like floodgates on these culverts, or are they basically a guess as far as what the capacity is of the pipes that are going there? I really haven't gotten an answer to that as far as how that works. Because my concern, I'll go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're saying what is the existing pre-developed flow coming off that property today? That's what you're wanting to know.
And how do you measure that at the culverts?
So, and that's where, like, that gets into the technical engineering analysis, hydraulic analysis, that we're not at that point yet.
But there will be like a floodgate, like there is, where the gentleman before said that there's gates on 4th Avenue.
No, it'll be a control structure that Colin had kind of described. That's going to, it regulates that the water will not be released faster than the pre-developed rate. So,
And who monitors that?
well, it's engineered.
It's engineered, but somebody's got to run the show out there, I would think.
No, it's just placed at the right elevation and the right size of the pipes.
Okay.
This combined with the size of the pond and
The
all those
depth
things.
of the
depth of the
pond.
pond.
Yeah.
So these are pretty well-defined engineering standards that don't govern just Watertown here. I mean, there's national
It's federal
criteria,
mandate.
federally mandated requirements here. A lot of engineering goes into the design of these structures and how to compute the hydraulic analysis. It's well beyond my level of expertise, but it goes into a lot of engineering detail with our engineering department overseeing the calculations, but all done to a standard that governs really across the U.S.
Yeah, and who are professional engineers reviewing it?
I did have a civil PE review it, and he was very alarmed by the water flow in those two, which is what brought me that attention. So that's an independent consultant who is a professional engineer. So I guess that's where my point came from with those documents that I gave you.
Yeah, I think the important thing to just reiterate here is that all developers are held to the same standard, that they need to control the detention and release of the water at pre-development levels. And that governs every development in the community. So they'll be held to the same standards when it gets to the construction phase and when they complete the full-scale hydraulic analysis, just as any other developer would be.
Yes, thank you, Blake. And then also, again, this is conceptual. We haven't even received the hydraulic analysis. And so also engineers can any engineer can design something differently. So, but what we're looking at when we get their preliminary plans and their construction plans is that they are meeting our manuals and regulations.
Will the public have a chance to look at those discussions, or it doesn't seem like me it's transparent a little bit that you guys did all your studies, but you didn't share it with them. We got the documents late. I mean, I would expect more than that.
Mr. Chair.
We haven't received, can I answer that? We haven't
Yes, Brandy.
received them yet. And, but we have had requests before if you want to have third-party review, we've had that before. But it doesn't impact the city's review.
Honest, your house is your biggest asset you probably own. You're going to put everything you can to protect it. And that'd be one of them as far as what is the plans that are designed that are going to be affecting your property. I'm not expecting anybody to say, hey, this is how the pipes are going to be setting out there. I'm just looking at where are we going to move this water to. As I was driving in here to this meeting today, and you're going from the corner of 26th Avenue, right, Danny Rottershot's firecracker stand, and heading south, you'll notice in the city of Watertown that we're up higher, and as we graduate up that highway, there's a big drop-off coming back into 26th Avenue. And I don't know if you can show them on there. I don't see how your plan will show how that water is going to be handled. I only see 2 drainage ponds that we talked about
Right.
on a full quarter of ground. Now, if you go along that road there, there's Lou's.
Yep.
That's one holding pond, but where's all this water that's coming along the highway there?
And that's what,
There's no holding ponds there at all?
we'll review that at the preliminary plan phase.
So before they can start construction, they'll have to do the full-scale hydraulic analysis. They'll have to come with the full-scale design, and they'll have to get engineering approval before they can start construction. Right now, we're looking at a concept plan, which is the general nature of the development. It's still fairly high level, but we do see, the positioning of where these detention facilities are expected to be. They'll still have to go through design phase. They will need to prove that those facilities are sized to a level that would meet the engineering design standards.
And who it needs to be proved to is not necessarily this appointed board or the city council. The city has developed rules and regulations that put that in the hands of their professional staff to determine whether or not drawings and designs comport with what the standards are. So the role of the planning commission here, as the chair just recently stated, is we're here to take a look at whether or not the development conceptually adheres to a long-range development plan to the city, from whether or not it generally follows with the comprehensive land use plan as far as what we think it could look like, what we think the city should look like in that area, and addressing the use, the general street layout, those types of things where we think, yes, it generally follows our overarching plan. The specifics of where does the water go, where does that happen, is handled by the professional staff. Parks, those are determined by the Park and Recreation Board, and all those are all moving pieces. And I understand from a public's perception, especially those of you that don't live within the city of Watertown, you want to make sure something happens because you feel that you might be somewhat disenfranchised from what's happening right now because you don't vote for any of the people that are making the ultimate decisions on this project. I get that. I get that. But I can tell you that from a planning commissioner's perspective, we entrust staff to take the ball once it's handed off to them to make sure that everything that happens is done in accordance with standards that have been approved by elected officials.
Yes.
Of which we're not. We're appointed.
And thank you for that, Todd. And then just to speak to, so we have our set requirements as far as when adjacent landowner letters need to be sent out and then when agendas need to be posted. And so by state statute, those are set. So the adjacent landowner has to be sent 5 days in advance of the public hearing. The agenda has to be posted 24 hours in advance. And that is frankly, that turnaround time is because as everyone, we're all trying to keep things processing and moving forward and to give just consistent notice. Now, if we can get an agenda posted sooner, we will. And the intent was to have that on Monday. But as we work through things, and so transparency is really important to us, and that's something that we would hope that the public understands, that us as working for the city and public servants, we are looking out for the public's well-being. So we're looking at our standards, keeping that consistent, but we can only review things as they come in. So we have the concept plan before the Plan Commission as an overall master plan of what this quarter section of land will look like. And then when the preliminary plan comes in, that's where we get that hydraulic analysis. And we are looking out for the best interest of everybody because so that's what really we would hope that the public would entrust staff to be looking out for. So that's where we just have our processes, and yes, we're human, so we make mistakes, and we decide that it's more important to put the map on there than to have the title block correct. And we want to make sure that we are getting information out there, and they can always reach out to staff. And if they want additional information, we're more than happy to share. When things are submitted as applications and they're issued or approved, they are public. So never hesitate to reach out. We're not trying to hold any information.
I do have a quick question, though. Those are the only two holding ponds, but where Dan fireworks stand is that water's coming from the Jefferson School quarter. How are you guys going to stop that water that's over on the Jefferson School side from going through that 2-foot culvert?
So
it's washing over into that, because I see it all the time.
I feel like at this point it's inappropriate for us to have any more really specific drainage questions because I can't answer that.
Okay, and that's fine. That's all. A simple yes or no satisfies me. But also the water. The next topic I got is the water has to be at the same level prior to putting the ponds in there. Does that mean that water is going to sit in a slough for a full year? Because of the water's upstage is coming. I'm talking about the water from Highway 81 on the south side of the property, the Jefferson School, and all the other property up there is all going to go jamming through Lou's fireworks stand. And where's it coming from? It's along the highway, Jefferson, and the other surrounding parts of the quarter.
Once those quarters get developed as well, we'll be able to look at those.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah. All we can look at right now is the concept plan that's in front of us, and because this is a concept plan, we're not going to get into the very specific details of the water. Just know that there are regulations that govern all of this. These developers are going to be held to the same standards that every developer is, and that they cannot release more flow than the pre-development levels of flow in terms of rates.
So one last thing here. If I do start getting back up in my sewer from the project being handled, what happens to me as far as a landowner that I was concerned about it in the first place, saying that I don't agree with it? Does that go on record that that's, you know, how it's handled? Is that a technical question?
It's probably a legal question that you need to talk to an attorney about.
Yep. Yep, because you're on,
Everything's a civil matter, Donnie.
Yeah.
and you're on record, so.
I appreciate it. You guys are doing a good job listening to us on all our comments, and, you know, you're only in here for one cause, to make the life of people in Watertown great, the city on the go. But as citizens, we need to have answers sometimes to the questions that we have, that we scratch our head that we're not telling them everything. We live out there. We know what's going on. And, you know, I'm surprised at how many people in the community don't even know that the water heads north a mile, and then it goes into the Sioux River. Does that contaminate anything? I have no idea. Has anybody studied it as far as what the impact is by having all that water drifting over the artesian wells of Watertown? I think that's something that needs to be answered.
So the detention ponds, they do have the water quality component into it, and that is all the Clean Water Act. They're all designed to have that water quality component. I'm not sure as far as the county when they go undetained or when there's tiling, everything, whatnot, pollutants, but in the city we are retaining them, or we're detaining it so that the water quality component is taken care of.
Right now, you're subject entirely to Mother Nature, right? Because whatever flooding, whatever snow melt comes off of that land, it's just going to flow naturally.
Or
And if those-
agricultural tiling.
Yeah, and if those culverts are getting upsized, it's going to flow faster off of this. So with this development, there's now going to be regulations, a lot of study that goes into the control of that water to ensure that it's happening within an allowable rate that's been standardized across development.
And we know how long it takes to develop a quarter section land in this city. I mean, this isn't going to happen. Hell, Donnie, I'm sorry, but you and I might be gone before it's all the way done. I hope more for J&J that it develops fast, but you know, I've been here for almost 60 years, and I know how long it takes to develop a quarter section in this community.
Yeah.
So.
But I think, so as Mr. DeYoung pointed out, though, as soon as they start development, they are subject to having even temporary retainment. So the moment that they start construction on this project, they have to start controlling that water in a regulated methodology, which I think is an important distinction to make. I appreciate the comments, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir? Yeah.
He's gonna speak here quick.
Jamie Andrews with J&J Land Sales. I just want to first off, Todd, address your concern about the zoning on them 3 lots up. I have no problem with modifying them to make a change. And I just want to speak out to all the residents. I appreciate their concerns. This is our 4th or 5th development in town, and I'll be the first to tell you, it's not easy. The city just don't let us dump water on the neighbors and get away with it. We're always accessible. Trust me, the city has no problem getting my number out if you call and have concerns. At least it don't seem like that. But I'm definitely here to be a good neighbor, and if we see any potential issues, we'll definitely try to address and be a good neighbor. I can only appreciate you guys having the concerns you do, because it wouldn't be normal if we didn't have them, I guess. And that's all I really have.
I do have a couple of questions here, and this may be for yourself and Brandy, not related to the water issue, but some of the other things that are important to us as a planning commission. If we look at 24th Avenue North there on the plan, this does start as an 80-foot right-of-way over on the westerly section of that, but then it goes down to, I believe, a 66-foot right-of-way. This is going to be a collector route through the development, though. Can you talk to me about the reason for the difference in right-of-way?
So this is a minor collector, which only allows or only requires a 66-foot right-of-way. But actually for a major or minor collector, it's the same width for the street. The reason why we kept 80 on the west side or asked for 80 is because in case we want a turn lane. But otherwise, it should not be, the street width should be sufficient within that 66-foot.
And also, I mean, we're really actually closer, I mean, because of our proximity to 26 being a minor arterial, or is it a major? I don't know how you guys have that classified. You know, normally that major collector would be further south, but because of the way the current thing, everything's built up, it's kind of got scooched around, right?
Right. Yep. And so we try to do the major collectors every quarter mile, and then the minors every half mile, and then the minor collector every quarter mile on our major street plan. And then we have all of the widths. And when I said it should be able to fit in the 66-foot, it will be able to, because it's a 41-foot road. So.
Yeah, so where we normally would have had the other major would have been at in between the boundary of this property and the existing Northridge property, right?
Right.
But there was never one planned in that location.
And sometimes with topography,
Yeah.
then that changes it. And this whole area kind of went off the, I guess, major street plan. Like it didn't conform to it. It kind of got messed up throughout this area here. So we're just trying to get it back on track with that and try to hold these developments to that where they're having, meeting our standard there. So you can see where Jefferson School actually was built, it cut that off. And then, where these lots were extended further north, there should have been another street connection here that would have brought it back. But then this acreage that has existed prior to any development, that also is a component too. So sometimes you get just the topography constraints or like this, a physical constraint.
Right.
In terms of farther to the west there, going into the River Ridge development north, what do we have for collectors over there?
So theirs is Grant, which then that ends up dead ending, but Grant does run through.
It's on the ridge.
All the way through Valley View.
Yeah.
And then so River Ridge is also a different development because of the topography, because you fall off. So there's not going to be that through street connection. I mean, 26th, we can hope someday that we can make that another arterial and a north bypass route. So, but it's going to cost a lot. And so, no, it doesn't make any feasible sense to have these go.
The big thing is we want to make sure we have that connectivity from J&J's proposed development to the next quarter across the road, and that's we have plenty of room, and we'll be able to maintain our standards, I think, in the quarter to the west of J&J's development. The stuff coming off 18th Avenue, which has been dedicated as the minor collector, because it runs in front of my office. I remember that. And so then that'll end up meandering its way back across that quarter north of Jefferson.
That's right. Yep.
They don't have no problem upsizing, costing us more money.
No. So I did want to ask the question, though, and it kind of relates to what Blake was asking. So when we looked at the concentration of commercial development, that C2 development, along with R3 development on the south side of that road, where we don't know, those could be 270 unit apartments or anything, right? That's where I had a little bit of a question on the 66-foot right of way, depending on, those 5 lots. I mean, they might be tall, and you could put, 600 units in that 2 blocks stretch.
You can still be able to fit a turn lane
with that.
Yeah.
And that was the question I was getting from a preliminary engineering. You were still, even with that traffic loads, we should still be okay.
Yep.
And then in terms of the sections immediately to the east and the west, we've not seen any concept or master planning of those areas yet at this point, have we?
No, we have not. And actually, too, our comprehensive land use plan doesn't even show that far out as far as our future land use.
But the one thing I think it probably hasn't been stated is that at some point in time, as that development moves further north of the 26, that's going to open up other opportunities and potential. And for those residents that are living on the north side of that, it's you hate to hear it, but your property will become more valuable as that northern corridor expands for commercial development. It's going to grow from 81 back towards the interstate too. So,
Right. It's just the natural
progression.
And growth of the city, and then that we would grow towards the exit.
Yeah. And we did have that called out in the comprehensive land use plan in a few different areas that, you know, we would see this type of mixed use development here and farther east towards the interstate. So following along the Highway 81 track there.
Yep.
Further to the west, we expect that to be more residential development, single family homes going towards River Ridge there. But going from here east, tracking along with the highway, we'd expect to see this type of mixed use development.
Especially in the 80, for the 80 south all the way across.
Yep.
Yeah.
Continuation of kind of what we've got coming out of town, and this is one of the faster growing areas of town. So if we look over the last 20, 30 years, so looking, you know, 30, 40 years into the future, it's going to look a lot different up here in this neck of the woods.
And yes, and the fact that they're two arterials. So as any city, you see it all the time with your interstate exits. That's where your arterial routes are, and that's where your commercial development should be.
So why doesn't that mimic your land use plan?
I think the sections that you pulled out of the land use plan are focused farther to the west. So if you take that 81 dividing line there and you look at what we'd notated in the land use plan, specifically for residential, was talking about west of 81.
No. If you look in your packet that I gave you, what's highlighted there shows R1 and R3 as your designated use, land use in your comprehensive plan, correct?
I can probably help answer that just from a developer's standpoint. When we go in and we work with engineering and the city, we obviously try to bring in what we think is obviously the best land use in our mind, what's going to sell, what's going to develop. You know, it doesn't do any good for us to bring in the mixed use or the different things that are going to sell, which we do have obviously a lot of different uses out here, and we've had good luck in doing this with our other developments. So, not saying this right out of the gate, we do come in sometimes and want changes just because there are changes in what the demand is at the time.
Yeah, and that's something that we try to reflect in that land use plan when we do adopt new versions of it over the years. I think that gets reviewed, I don't know, approximately every 10 years, 15 years. And it really is just a reflection or an estimation of what we think that the demand is going to be and that the industry is going to be at the time.
I will comment on the one section that he's highlighted on page 215 of his handout, where it says Northeast Growth Area, Rural Area. Well, the rural area is that area identified in the land use plan that doesn't anticipate growth happening, and so that additional commercial industrial development would not be encouraged. However, if growth is facilitated and infrastructure can be accommodated and installed, then it would shift into what we would call the future urbanized area. This land use plan, also taken into account, was drafted over a period of 5 or 6 years. It was just recently adopted, and things have changed. So when you take a look at that one map where I think it says, what's that orange area along what does that represent?
Mixed use.
Mixed use along there, but then there's another map that that breaks things out by development types. Yeah. And in there, it might have that part of that land as being rural because it wasn't anticipated to be developed, but
I don't think it is, Todd.
In this particular one, it's high-density residential is the way that it's called out there, which includes very much what we've got on the southern portion of 81 there, where we've got the big apartment buildings. Across the street, we've got offices. We've got the coffee shop there. We've got the bank. And so those are all listed uses kind of in that type of development.
C2, but not C3, I believe.
That is C3 where we've got those offices. We've got a commercial overlay district down there as well that you can apply to the zoning where relevant, because we've got a lot of R1 residential that butts directly up against that. So in general, though,
So
you know,
it's-
the discussion was centered around it's going to be mixed use. It's going to feel very much like the 81 corridor does feel today, and can continue to extend up to the north and farther east.
And so it shows, so yeah, it says residential, commercial, like it shows in the big map that I showed too.
Yep.
And so there's commercial.
And we have other sections of our ordinance, of our land use plan that identifies major arterial corridors as being principal areas for commercial development and general
Correct.
policy, correct?
Correct. And the other thing too is like there definitely this follows the comprehensive land use plan as I stated in the agenda packet, because it does have that mix of residential and commercial. And also when we do have our arterials or collector routes, that is where the high density residential and commercial development should take place. And the highway commercial district, the C3, should be adjacent to highways. That's the use for it.
There's a lot going on in that plan though, and it can be confusing. And I appreciate your comments on that and your questions. That's certainly something I think, you know, that we can take note of in when we review the next comprehensive land use plan to try to make it as clear as possible.
And two, just for the public, never hesitate to set up a meeting with staff and ask questions that you have. Like I said, we try to get the information out as soon as possible, but sometimes it's easier, you know, we put our information on the adjacent landowner letter too, so you can reach out with questions. And yeah, we do want to push transparency, so that's what we're there for.
Any other questions?
Can we adopt the concept plan as shown when it's incorrect?
We can make an amendment, can't we?
Okay. Because it was confusing to me when I read it, and now, I mean, I understand the explanation, but.
What was,
Just the
You've got
colors.
C2, you've got C2 highway commercial, C3 community commercial. You got it
Yeah,
backwards
so-
on the map.
no, so the colors are right.
The colors and
But
the C3 and 2 designations are correct, but the identifiers are incorrect.
So that it would be C2 and it is local commercial.
Correct.
And C3 would be highway commercial.
Correct. But what I'm saying is if we adopt this plan, then it's confusing, is what I'm saying, is if we adopt it as it's shown.
Okay.
Do we amend it today? Or does it adopt it as amended?
Yes, you would just say, like we would make, like for the record, me stating that the purple C2 is local commercial and the yellow C3 is highway commercial.
Right.
And I said that at the beginning, it's a clerical issue. And then the only thing that you would be amending would be these lots, which I will figure out which lots they are, which block they are, that they will not be zone C3, they will be zone C2.
That would be my, if you were taking a motion, Mr. Chair.
So lots 3 through 5, block 16.
I have no problem changing them.
And then she would like to speak as well.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're good. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, if there's anybody else to speak, go ahead and come up to the microphone.
Hi, I'm Maria Gruner. I live on 19th Avenue, so I'm an adjacent landowner. I came here with one concern. I might have two now. But I was wondering about Block 3, which is farther down south, that actually abuts my property. I was wondering why the lot sizes were larger and they weren't lining up with the other property lines. I know a lot of the property owners there have fences along their property lines, and so the fence lines will not adjoin. And it would just be nice if at least the first 3 lot sizes could be made the same as the abutting property. And you could maybe even squeeze another lot in that way. But they're bigger, and so the fences will straddle the property lines.
Brandy, Chair, is that part of Northridge a PUD? Is that why they're goofy sizes?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep.
And right now, so they're proposing this would be R1 single family, so it couldn't actually meet the width because they do have a lesser lot width.
Could it be changed to RC1 like the other block 2, which is the same size and would have the same problem? So just block 3, like the rest of it could stay R1, but just so that it solves that issue with the property owners right there?
Yeah.
Would that be?
Was there a reason? Do you recall?
You're not going to gain an extra lot by shrinking that up, so there's not enough space.
I don't know. It would just be preferable, at least for me, and probably for whoever buys the lot behind me, who then has 2 different fences in their backyard, one wooden and one vinyl. It's not going to look great for them.
Technically, too, you know, as far as sharing fences, we always encourage that people have their own fences and that they have them 6 feet off or 6 inches of the property line, so that you would end up having your own fence all the way around your property.
Yeah. But, you know, it's been 23 years. I've lived there for 13 years. I didn't plan on this being developed or how it was going to be zoned or the new lot sizes. So there was no way for us to plan for that back then. So that's my one concern. The other concern, if you would take into consideration, is with Block 4, which is C3, apparently. I honestly thought it was C2 when I came here because I had the wrong residential into C3, which is highway commercial, and there's no highway access. So you're going to be funneling all the traffic for that commercial district through my neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods. And if it was C2 instead of C3, it would restrict what was there. I mean, you couldn't put a hotel there then, and then
Yeah, so
send everything through.
the labels were incorrect, and that's what we were speaking. That
Yes.
needs to be adjusted on it. So the blue is the local commercial.
No, that
No,
blue is
blue was R2.
That's R2.
That's
Oh,
duplexes.
sorry.
So in the map, I'm confused what so the map has always,
I read the legend instead of the colors.
but that's still, I mean, it says C3. So
Yes, but
So it's
okay.
highway commercial.
But that's C3. So you've got highway commercial with no highway access right next to a residential area?
Well, there will be, that existing access point will be retained, I believe, even on the change of use. Is that correct, Mr. DOT representative? Will they still have access where the farm sits there?
Because there isn't a road.
Jeff Brink, Department of Transportation. Currently, right now, with the speeds being 45, we wouldn't put an access point at each lot, and but in the future, if the development continues to grow and we lower speeds, it would be possible to get accesses.
Well, what would be the policy on the existing access point that's on it's on 81 right now, that where the old farm site is, right there? That's
That existing one isn't going away from us. At this
so
point, yeah.
theoretically, we wouldn't be shoveling 3 blocks of commercial. I'm going to come right off the 81.
Yep.
But is that going to go through? Because I don't see a road there.
No, that would
So
go
it
right
would be
into the
one
driveway.
business that would have a driveway.
Right.
So all the others, people would either have to go all the way up 81 and backtrack back down Jameson Trail, or they're going to funnel through my 2-block road. So you're going to be funneling a lot of business traffic through a residential area. And so it would at least be nice if it was local communities, so it would limit the number of businesses and the type of businesses that could be there, and it would be more community friendly.
At least you're talking all the way up to Jeremiah, or everything north of Jeremiah could still be C3, or are you taking everything along that stretch?
Even just Araya, that would be about the halfway point. But for me, even Jeremiah would be nice, because otherwise people are going to come up 18th. They're going to take the most direct route. They're going to get funnel up through 19th Avenue and up that road, because they won't want to be on 45-mile-an-hour roads, go all the way past their designation, and then backtrack to the business they're looking for. So they'll either come off 11th and go through the residential area, or they'll come up through my neighborhood.
I think that this traffic pattern, so yeah, they're going to come down to 7th because that's a collector. And that's what the minor collectors are for, filtering. And then, but here, I mean, it does depend. So however they would end up looping, but.
Well, I think but she's talking about if I'm leaving my office on 18th Avenue and I drive up 81, I come back on 24th to come back down south because there's a really cool bar restaurant on that property right now. What I probably won't do that. I'll just go up 18th, up to 19th, and I'm going to hit that corner pub right there. And so I will be driving past your house.
Yeah, it's I think going to be a large traffic increase through that neighborhood that's not used to seeing it. There's not a lot of access points from the south going into that large development area.
If you want to come forward.
When Northridge, we talked about it earlier, right? That was kind of that development that was designed differently. Them streets up there, correct me if I'm wrong, are not as wide as other city streets. So right now, if there's cars parked on both sides, it's one lane traffic. And now you're going to add more traffic, like you said, to come into there up them streets. I see that as a little bit of a concern just because, I mean, right now you can't get 2 cars through there. Are we going to take parking away from them residents that already have small lots and do no parking on one side so you have more space?
Randy,
and that's a thing.
what's 7th planned at as a collector?
What's that?
What's 7th?
The width?
Yeah.
It'll be 41 feet. So it will jut
Northridge?
out. Oh, Northridge, it is narrow. But that's another thing, too, that it would have that natural calming when it is, like, it's not your path of least resistance. So how traffic pattern would adjust to that, we'll see. Actually, I think 7th might be wider than the other ones because it is so this is 38. And this is 31.
Yep. Isn't the through road on 6th, though? Like, it links in on 6th Avenue. I guess it doesn't go through, but it links in.
I thought it was
Northridge
7th.
goes all the way through. That's the one.
Yeah, it's Northridge. They changed it to 6th Avenue, and then it connects up to 19th.
Isn't that, so this is where it's going to connect?
There's
At 7th?
2 connection points.
Is one as well, where the road will go
Right.
through.
But it won't be, that's not the collector route, though, because then that hits a local street and tees.
But it is one of the most direct routes, is what I'm saying.
Oh.
But driving on 81, and you're talking about the C3 lots on 81 to the east of 81 there, the individual lots at the time of platting will be given access and or driveway easements for possibly sharing of those lots.
There's no guarantee that DOT will give any access
Right.
to 81.
Right, but there could be access
There's no
through an
guarantee-
easement of the lots.
There's no guarantee that I can make a right-hand turn going north onto any of those lots through DOT. Is that
Right.
correct, Jeff?
Right.
Except for the existing driveway that's, except where there's an access there.
Yeah.
Right.
So anytime, though, as far as street pattern goes, you're always going to you want connectivity, but how you would anticipate that traffic would funnel is through collector routes. I mean, because it's just the natural, it's going to be your path of least resistance. And that's why you have them designed that way. Everything funnels to them.
But your GPS in your car doesn't take you that way. It just takes you the fastest route or the shortest route. And that's what a lot of people use, especially if it's zoned C3 and not Z2, and where you can put hotels and different things in there that you couldn't put in a local community commercial district. Or even if it was residential, but I'm not asking for residential. But yeah, if it was a C2 instead of a C3, it would limit what you could put there, and you might have less traffic.
What are the lots that are immediately adjacent to the west? Are those C3 or C2?
There's C2.
Yeah, it's C2 to the south from the map I saw. So is it possible to make that C2 continuing up since they have limited access points? And it would limit what you could put there. Because there's a big difference between hotel traffic and people just going to church once a week or something, or a daycare.
So your permitted uses in a C2, so you have neighborhood retail establishment, automobile parking lot, bank or financial institution, service establishment, public utilities, office, recreational use, recreation facility, religious institution, medical cannabis dispensary. And then C3 is where you can get into your same thing with but it's a retail establishment, different definition there, but then that's where motel, hotel, restaurant, they still could ask for most of the things that are in the C2 as a conditional use that are in the C3 as permitted as a conditional use in the C2.
Yep, but they'd need permission for that then, correct?
Yep, they would
wouldn't
go
just
to
be
the
able
Board of
build.
Adjustment.
Whereas if it's C2, then they wouldn't be able to build without permission, but if it's C3, they could just go ahead and put whatever.
Correct.
Correct.
My recollection back in the day is that originally when that PUD was being developed, with Jim Smith and the fellows from Persona, when they were putting that deal together, they were looking at C3 zoning along 212 or not 212, along 81, but it was reverted to C2 primarily from an access issue and also the being able to sell lots that was going to butt right up to the C3. It was a little bit different in that situation. They didn't have, that was my recollection of why it was zoned C2 and not C3. But that was 1990s something.
Well, those, for me as a landowner, would be the two biggest concerns, is the traffic flow and having highway commercial that close to my residential area, and what they can use it for without having an actual access point to the highway. Thank you.
Hey, Brandy, that road stub that currently ends there in Northridge, what's the ownership of that currently at?
Sorry. Or do you want this map
Does
up?
it end right at the property line?
Right here.
Yeah, right where your cursor is, if you zoom in there, where that road stub is.
Oh, okay.
Because it doesn't continue all the way to the...
Right.
So, in terms of responsibility for connection of that, where would that typically lie?
So, really, it should have been completed when Northridge was developed. And so how that would happen today is it would be assessed to the adjacent property owners. But being that this needs to be developed, it needs to be connected. If that would be an extension that J&J would also include on their construction plans, is something I guess we need to actually dive in further into.
Would you pull that out just a little bit further? I wanted to kind of see that again, how that relates, wider angle.
It seems to me like that connection there is not
Necessary.
entirely necessary, because 7th is supposed to be the collector through Northridge.
We vacated that, and then you just create another residential lot out of it. If there's no services there and you funnel everything back to 7th, that would make a heck of a better idea.
Yeah.
I mean, then you would be funneling traffic where you want it to go, and it wouldn't be going down 19th.
So yeah, just disconnect 9th and 6th.
I don't know about the 9th as big deal. I think that one there is probably going to be more of an issue. You got you'd be. I guess I don't know, from an emergency services standpoint, that would be the only
Right.
thing that would be the only thing I would be concerned about.
Because 2, then I see what you mean, because there's no commercial over here, so 9th could stay.
Yeah.
But this, to limit the commercial going through the existing neighborhood.
It would push it all to the collector, which is what we want to do from a master road plan standpoint.
Yeah, that's a heck of a good idea, Blake.
Yeah.
That would maybe address some of your concerns, ma'am.
It would be a lot better if they couldn't go through 6th Street. I mean, that would fix a lot of things.
And if you zoom out a little bit on how long that road is and the relationship to the neighborhood, it doesn't make a lot of sense there. I don't think it adds a significant amount of value to connect them.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, that's a great fix there. Because it's dead ending a lot up.
Yep. And that's just a big, horseshoe right there in that neighborhood anyway.
It does impact my ability to go from work, though, up there to that new restaurant.
You'll have to drive where you're supposed to drive, Todd. I do have the public hearing open. Was there anybody else to speak?
I'm Jody Rammel. I'm an adjacent homeowner on 26th Avenue. And I did just want to express concern because we live in the country. And this is something that we've not lived there for 33 years in the country that we really want to view out our front window. But I realize there's only so much we can do. I did wonder if there was something that could be considered about having the highway commercial yellow shaded area right across the street from our driveways. It would be preferable if it was residential or something a little less hotelish right out our front window. But, I don't know how much that's valued of what we view and what we don't view. But after 33 years, you kind of don't want to lose that. So just want that to be considered, maybe looking at something like that, or I know it's highway commercial because that's a highway bypass, but also even residential commercial, anything would be preferred over highway commercial, because our driveways are right there. And I also, just aesthetically looking at the berm situation with the holding ponds and so on, what kind of view that's going to be also, like the berm sides are, once again, we've lived there for 33 years. There's a lot of water there, and I assume those berms are going to be quite high to hold that water. Just aesthetically, I don't really know how to picture what that looks like, but there are residential homes there. There's 3 of us. I know that's only a few, but we've all been there quite a while. Also, I do have a concern with traffic, and I know that will be addressed, but once again, I just wanted to state, as a homeowner who lives there and watches the traffic, having, there is a lot of truck traffic on that. It's a highway bypass, of course. Having the 7th, street dump out onto that, just a heads up, that's going to be kind of a mess, because that's going to need to be really regulated. There's times when they are doing a little bit of construction in front of our 3 houses, and within basically 3 minutes, there's 5 trucks lined up, and they're lined up in front of our house already, waiting to make the turn. And that's basically right where kind of 7th will come in. So just, there is a concern there of how that's going to be managed. Don't want to have to be locked in my driveway and can't get out because trucks are parked. And also 81, a lot of traffic on that too, just when they were doing some road work a couple weeks ago. It doesn't take long for a big line of cars to line up when they hold up the traffic. But I just want to make sure that's a concern that's going to be looked at. I'm sure it will be, but I just wanted to express that. And also just the, when the dumping of the water into that road ditch, I just wanted to understand that, so that's the road ditch that would be along Lou's Fireworks, and then, so that ditch would basically be full of water, right? When they would dump from the ponds. Was that the plan?
Not
They would dump from
necessarily.
the ponds and it would go down the road ditch?
The ditches aren't generally designed to hold and retain water, and that's part of
Okay.
the reason why the DOT is looking at increasing the size of those culverts, because today it is holding and retaining water.
Okay.
What they're going to be locked into it, as we were talking about previously, all developers are required to maintain a consistent rate of flow for releasing it from their property boundaries. So their property boundary ends at the ditch, and that's where they would have to control how much water they're letting into the ditch, which
Okay.
would then subsequently flow through the culvert structures.
Understood. Also, just food for thought as far as, would there be some thought into maybe a service road? Would that be appropriate along the highway, having a service road within that infrastructure? I don't know. I'm just suggesting, I don't know if that's appropriate thing or not. Also, with the trees along there, is there an environmental impact study that's going to be done with that? Or is that something that is looked at nature-wise anymore?
From a tree standpoint, when anybody builds within the city, we have landscaping requirements, so infrastructure improvement requirements for those developments. So once this gets brought in and they do go to construct on that land, they'd have to meet all those requirements.
But the existing shelter belt that's on there in the middle of that section, I'm not saying it's going to be there. More than likely, it will not be there.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
They tore the one out about a half mile north of my house on 14th.
I know,
and
it's sad.
And I cussed at J&J for about 5 years, but now it's getting better with the houses because now that stopped the snow. But.
So those are all my concerns. Thank you.
Yeah,
I just echo that. I strongly encourage developers as they're going through and planning where we do have natural trees already established. If you can incorporate them into the plans and the boundaries of those lots, please do that.
Hi, my name's Todd Decker. I'm adjacent owner, just the Decker Addition, just southwest there. Real quick question: where are the utilities and sewage? Is that coming up 81 to that C3 location, or where are the utilities being driven from?
I'll pull that up here, but I don't believe that there are.
It stops on that open lot of ours.
Yep. So then they will be running them through various locations.
So not up 81 then?
Nope. It'll end there. It must just be in the elevations on how they're able to serve that. So it will, this is, yeah, should be installed. So I think that there will be an extension. That'll be extended. This is where it exists today on your property.
Okay.
And then they'll be extending it further up onto those first 3 lots.
So my next question then is, am I being billed for the addition that I have to do on my lot, or how's that work?
So again, with that being a private development and the necessity to extend, it wouldn't be an assessment project. An assessment project would be, now it's always, orderly development should happen where you extend all of your services to the extent to your lot line at the time that it's platted. So we get into these unique scenarios where, for whatever reason, that wasn't required. So again, I'd like to talk to Heath about that, but I think that it can be private development driven because of the necessity. Heath is the public works director and city engineer.
Okay.
So I'll confirm.
Need to know what's the plan. So instead of a big building, I'm kind of stretched right now. need to know what the budget's going to be if I have to do something about that, or what the plan is. So okay. So I talked to Heath, as you're saying.
Yeah. Yep.
Or is it
that works? I can confirm.
Or JJ, whoever's going to be. Okay. Right. Lastly, just as far as the DOT goes, I think again I've been wanting that highway slowed down and knowing where the access points are. We're allowed 1 on that lot. So to the community, I'd say just write the DOT. I think the city can't do anything. They have to wait for the state to make that judgment. So I'm glad Jeff is here. So thank you, Jeff. So that's what I'm going to start planning on doing. I did ask for a speed study about a year and a half ago from the DOT, and it has not been done yet. So I'll have to get the writing campaign going and get a letter a week and start pushing for that. So, okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brandy, one last question since he brought up utilities. All of the sanitary sewer will be drained. Gravity flow. We won't have to lift anything, or are we going to have to put some lift stations in?
Yep, there's a lift station included. And it's just all, if we can gravity feed things, great, but, topography doesn't allow for that sometimes.
Where's that where's that lift station going to be located?
Let me find it here. Isn't it in this location? Oh, right there. So, yeah, right south of 26th.
Are we making any I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but are we making any presumptions that land that developed to the north would end up using that same lift station at some point in time in the future, or no?
We're not, now, as far as upsizing, we don't have those types of studies.
Okay.
So this is going to be a private developer installing a lift station. And yes, it would be great if it could be upsized to allow for serving additional developments, but timing of that is so hard to predict. And that's
But
where we're at
it
with
will be our lift station at some point in time, when I mean the city's lift station, and as development to the north happens, there's more than likely that there will need to be a cost to upsize that lift station to accommodate development to the north.
Right.
Because everything starts to slope the other way, right?
Yep.
I will close the public hearing at this point in time.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the concept plan with the following changes. One, recognize the statements made by the community, what's your title again? Community
Development Manager.
Development Manager regarding the text block of the concept plan matching up with the colors. 1, 2, changing the 3 lots currently proposed to be C3 to C2 that Brandy had said what they were before. And then the third one would be to close off the access point, I believe it is to 19th. Is that right?
6th Street.
6th Street and whatever that intersection is.
Okay, so Northridge Drive,
Northridge.
northeast.
Yep. Closing that existing there.
Yep, we'll just get it real specific here.
Yeah.
So between 19th Avenue
Mm-hmm.
and then I believe Jameson Trail. So that Northridge Drive northeast would
Stops. Yeah.
not be included.
Thank you, Todd.
Oh, no, you're talking the 3 lots that are up in the north central, okay.
Yeah, the interior.
I wasn't sure if they were talking, okay.
Not the ones that she was talking about, but closing off that.
So we're talking lot 3,
Adjacent to the detention
4, and 5 of block 16. From C3 as shown to C2, local commercial. Community commercial shouldn't be on there at all.
We have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Have a second. Any additional discussion on that?
Just thank everybody that came to talk about the issues that are important to you. And change is difficult. And you've been on the fringes of the community for many, many years, and the community is going to catch up to you. And with that change, there will be impacts in your life. But when we're thinking about the greater good, we generally think about the greater good of all the peoples, not only within the city of Watertown, but those on the periphery as well. And that I think, hopefully you can walk away from this knowing that staff will do due diligence to make sure that those drainage issues and other things that you had brought up will be addressed, so that when J&J begins this development, which we hopefully it will be soon and it will be successful, it will be done to a standard to address your concerns.
Conversation with the board here in terms of the C2, C3, farther to the south, we have done some overlay districts, specific office use concept, right? Do you think it's appropriate to look at any of these in a similar light, where we're adjacent to or immediately across from some of the existing development?
So If I could speak to for the specific office use, that's why the C2 was formed, that C2 district. Because then we had the specific office use as a conditional use for the R1 or the residential districts. So that in theory, those lots would be rezoned to C2.
Because we backed into that, you know, at some point on North 81 there, right? Because we had all these residential established homes, and then immediately adjacent to them are lots that abut the highway. And so we came up with that designation specific to that area of town. So being as we do have some residential homes across the street from several of these C3 lots, is it appropriate to look at those in a similar light?
I think the only differentiation here is that on that stuff on 81, it was right up, butting up to the backyard fence. Here, I've got a road that would separate that, and that would be acting as the natural buffer, open space. And so,
And it's developing vice versa. Like, so the residential existed and then the commercial came. We're here, these residential districts that are transitional. So you're not doing just complete single family to commercial. Only on actually a couple here. No, even there you're getting that separation. So they would know that going into it, and when they purchase that lot, that is commercial.
I was specifically speaking of on the north side of the development across the street from the residents that are in the county. So those 3 lots there.
Well,
and it is an important distinction, Todd, because a lot of that discussion was because the backyards immediately abutted what would be a parking lot for those businesses, and that's where a lot of that came from.
right.
Motion to amend. Yeah, I mean, you could certainly divide those out so that they're half lots.
so I just want to also, with development for city development and comprehensive land use, long term, would we foresee acreages being along a highway route? So just to take that into consideration.
Yeah, but there's
They're there today, and it's the issue that you see every community eventually, whether it's Sioux Falls or Brookings or whoever, as you grow out into the country, you know, people are living there, their lives will change, and I'm not trying to be callous about it, but the city has already made the determination that where Donnie lives today, someday is going to be a Burger King, and that's basically that's what's happened.
And that's just planning perspective of what I'm trying to at least make you aware of. I mean, you end up with acreages like that, for example, on Second, you know, the tree farm property, even though, so that stayed an acreage. But you see those examples throughout, and it just depends on how, you know, how the city grows. But trying to keep it as a comprehensive plan of growth.
Yeah, and so the question is, you know, whether you have that trade-off of C3 to C2 when a lot of the uses do really overlap, and do you try to tighten it up a little bit at this point in time, or do you just let it
market
flow?
dictate? Yeah.
I mean, I'd make a motion to amend to restrict the north section of those 3 lots as discussed to C2 and see if there's a second.
I'll make the second.
Okay, so we are talking specifically lots, let me zoom in there. Lots 6, 7, and 9?
Or the north half of 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Okay, so all north of Jameson Trail there, so 6, 7, 9, and 8.
No.
Just the north half.
Oh,
of
just
those,
the north
Because you could still
half.
subdivide those out. You've got enough square footage there on those lots, right?
Lot 9.
Well, but we can't have split zoning.
Exactly.
So it's either gotta all be C2 or, right?
You'd have to.
Replat the lots.
Or they,
Yeah.
or this is again a
replat the
concept plan. We're saying the north half has to be, so if you want to come in with a plat, they can change it. I
It'd
mean,
have
the
to be platted that way, yeah.
But yeah, okay, but then we don't have, then we're gonna have to get a private street in there because each lot needs frontage.
Yeah, that's true.
Or a prescribed easement.
No. If we're gonna plat a lot, it has to have a private street or a public right of way.
Or access to Highway 81.
Right, which we cannot guarantee.
Right.
Because there's no existing access there.
Do you want to just make it all of it for now, for purposes of discussion?
For the purpose of discussion, and yeah, we'll do, so 6, 7, and 8?
Yeah.
Or 6, 7, and 9?
Yep, and then might as well do 8.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, across the streets is C1 though, or C3. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So I mean, you could leave that as a C3 on the corner.
The uses within these really do commingle, right? I mean, there's so much overlap between the districts. It's just whether you have a little bit tighter control over those specific lots. That's the question. So I would just say those 3. That's my motion.
In the second?
And my second.
So,
And my second.
and then just wanted to say here, I mean, this is 2 arterial intersection. Long-term planning.
You want to call a motion? Any more discussion on that? Since you made the motion, I'll act for you.
Any other input on that?
Do you want to just vote on your motion?
Yeah, we'll vote on the motion. The
Motion to
amendment
amend.
first.
Motion to amend mine. So that would be the appropriate vote.
So this is just including,
Those 3 lots. That's
Okay.
the only thing that we're voting on now.
and you guys only want these 3 lots?
That's
what we're voting on.
Okay. You want roll call?
Yeah.
Hanson,
No.
Dolly,
No.
Kays,
no.
Colhane,
Yes.
Oletsky.
Yes.
Back on the motion to approve with the K's motion.
Okay.
But it
So
has
we've
not
got
been seconded.
We got a motion on the table.
Has not been seconded yet.
Jana, has it been seconded yet?
I think
Maybe Jason did. I'm sorry.
And did we want to reiterate again, those were corrections to the legend on the map. The change of those interior lots that, Brandy, you identified them from C3 to C2.
Yep.
And then the removal of the 6th Street or Northridge Drive connector. Yeah.
Yes, so Northridge Drive between Jameson Trail
And 19th Avenue.
and 19th Avenue Northeast. And yeah, Jana has those down in the minutes.
Okay, any additional discussion before we take a vote? Okay, call roll.
All right, Oletsky,
Yes.
Colhane,
Yes.
Kays,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
All in favor? That motion carries. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda tonight, which is 6B, Commission Consideration of Resolution Number 2023-19, plat of Calvin Industrial Park.
All right, thank you, Blake. Are you good with,
And just for the record, Mr. Brink has resumed his post.
okay. So the Calvin Industrial Second Edition. We saw the concept plan for this development a couple meetings back on April 6th. And so now we're looking at just platting one of the lots within this development. It will be 15.83 acres. It's already zoned I-1 light industrial. And there will be the segment of Calvin Drive, which if you recall from the concept plan, that loops around, and I can pull that up actually just for reference. that will, and sorry, this development agreement too should have been a part of the agenda, but the Plan Commission does not approve the development agreement. It's just for your information. But so the development agreement outlines the public infrastructure improvement requirements, which that and this time is just Calvin Drive. And then this lot will be served by public sewer and water. It'll connect with private service lines to existing infrastructure, and then they will install the sewer and water main under Calvin Drive that will eventually connect to the larger infrastructure improvement with including a lift station that will come at a later phase of Calvin Industrial Park Edition. So with that, I'll stand by for any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
The development agreement isn't in our packet, but it was online. One thing in the development agreement said that there would be a turnaround constructed, a temporary turnaround constructed on Calvin Drive until such time that that road went through. I know we don't approve the development agreement, but I would strongly urge that it does get a turnaround. I hate dead-end streets that don't have the ability for, our dump trucks and anything.
I could shed a little bit of light on this. That street's going to be built sooner than later. What's precipitating this is the need for a potential project to be located on Lot 1. There's grant dollars that are being associated with this project through the Economic Development Administration, of which is going to be paying for the water, the sewer, and the street. So it'll all get built at the same time, but we are moving this forward along so that the individual use can be accommodated. I don't know. There will be a road built before there's a turnaround built.
That's my biggest concern. As long as there's not a dead end. I mean, that's.
And that is included in the development agreement. So even if it doesn't all
dovetail,
yep, then we'll have a turnaround.
Right.
And it won't be approved. It wouldn't be inspected or be approved and go into warranty until that would be there, because that's what they're signing off on the development agreement.
Right. We got the sewage issue sorted out, or we're just putting in tanks?
Nope, it will connect to the public sewer system, and then we
got a
will.
lift station or whatever the holdup was?
Well, we're still working on that detail. That's why we're only doing one lot right now. This lot can be serviced by the existing, sanitary, and so that it'll actually connect up here, if I get it down there, up almost where Calvin Industrial first is, across from Terex there. So it'll be a long service line. They'll have a private grinder pump, but we are not doing, so if the development with the lift station does not happen, this will still be connected to public sanitary sewer service. And this actually, it doesn't even show where it's extended to now. I think, well, okay, so it's going to extend to the north.
Brandy, do we have any master plan outlook for road infrastructure extending to the north and west of this road?
Unfortunately, not. That will be, because you're talking this right here, Blake.
Yeah, that kind of whole region, and then how that ties up into where, we've got all those contractor shops and things built out behind Walmart up here. So just long-term planning for our road network within there. This isn't going to make a large impact on that in any regards, but I think we should have some sort of
theoretically that would be a collector route going straight south along that route, because that's a quarter line, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we've got the quarry right in there too.
So yes, we do have right of way reserved so that it could connect, and 23rd would come all the way down. Depending on topography, once again, we'd have to look at that as far as when it comes forward. But the major street plan does show that this would be connected down. And then same with 26th, we did make sure that this street was extended so that we were having this as the minor collector. Obviously, this is a topography constraint there.
And there's some other factors at play out in that region from a topography standpoint.
So sorry for my response right off the cuff there. So we do have it shown on our major street plan. It is on our radar. I thought you were meaning more so as far as the timeline for the improvement to it, because it is a rural street section currently, and obviously it would have to be redone as an urban collector route. So that will all be things that we'll work through as we get to those phases and those developments.
And my comment was just more in how things are going to all tie together, because we are taking these as, you know, individual lots and developing and building roads out to service the individual lots, but we have to have in mind that long-term vision for the road network and making sure that it's all going to tie together.
Yes, definitely. So we look at each concept plan because obviously they're their own either quarter sections or smaller portions where we want, that's why we're looking at a concept plan. And when you do have a smaller piece like this, it is like you don't want to just piecemeal it. That's why we do have concept plans. And then our major street plan. So it's all, and our comprehensive land use plan. So they're all connecting.
Good.
Make a motion to approve the resolution. Suggest.
Second. Motion by Colhane, second by Hanson. Any additional discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Brink.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Dolly.
Yes.
Kays.
Yep.
Colhane.
Yes.
Aletsky.
Yes.
All yes. That motion carries. Item 7 is open public comments. Has anybody signed up?
No.
Any new business?
None that I have.
Any old business?
None that I have.
Any reason for executive session?
No.